Why don't we trust atoms because they make up everything? Welcome to the land of clever puns where words twist and turn in a dance of humor and wit. We're about to embark on a journey through a landscape painted with puns, each one designed to tickle your funny bone in a different way, so let's plunge right in. Have you ever wondered why the bicycle couldn't stand up by itself? Well, it's because it was too tired. And speaking of tired, do you know what an exhausted kangaroo is? Out of bounds. Moving on to the culinary world, we have a few savory puns on the menu. Why don't some spices ever get lost in the kitchen? Because they always find time. And for dessert, why did the scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Now let's dive into the world of technology. Do you know why we don't tell secrets on a farm? Because the potatoes have eyes, the corn has ears, and the beans stalk. And speaking of technology, here's one for the computer buffs out there. Why don't programmers like nature? It has too many bugs. Next up, we have a pun that's a bit of a thinker. Why don't we ever see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. On the subject of animals, let's not forget our feathered friends. Why did the bird go to the hospital? To get a tweetment. And last but certainly not least, we delve into the world of sports. Why don't basketball players go on vacation? Because they would get called for traveling. And remember, time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere. Ah, dad jokes. Love them or hate them, you can't deny they have a certain charm. They're the linguistic equivalent of a gentle elbow nudge, a wry smile, a chuckle that's more air than sound. They're quintessentially dad. Let's dive in, shall we? Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Oh, and speaking of science, did you know that I used to work at a calendar factory? Yes, but I got fired because I took a couple of days off. All right, let's take a little detour to the animal kingdom. Here's one for you. Why don't some animals play cards in the wild? Because of cheetahs. And while we're at it, why did the scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Now here's a classic. Why did the golfer bring 2 pairs of pants? In case he got a hole in one. And while we're on the subject of sports, why don't basketball players make good gardeners? It's because they always dribble. Let's shift gears a bit. Have you ever thought about why you never see elephants hiding in trees? It's because they're so good at it. And here's another one to ponder. Did you hear about the mathematician who's afraid of negative numbers? He'll stop at nothing to avoid them. We can't have a dad joke session without some good old-fashioned wordplay. So why don't we ever tell secrets on a farm? Because the potatoes have eyes, the corn has ears, and the beans stalk. And finally, let's end this round of dad jokes with a classic. You might have heard this one before, but it never gets old. Why couldn't the bicycle stand up by itself? It was too tired. Ah, dad jokes. They might make you groan, but they'll always make you smile. I told my wife she should embrace her mistakes. She gave me a hug. Ah, the beauty of one-liners and witticisms. They're quick, they're sharp, and they make you do a double take. So let's dive in and see what we've got in store for you. You see, I find television very educating. Every time someone turns on the set, I go into the other room and read a book. Now, that's a win-win situation if you ask me. And speaking of books, they say a clear conscience is usually the sign of a bad memory. It's like the guy who said, I've got a photographic memory, but it's got no film. It's all fun and games until you start forgetting where you put the car keys. Speaking of cars, I told my friend that he didn't understand irony. He replied, "Are you kidding? I post comments on the internet all the time." Now that's a road well traveled with a detour sign that reads, "Warning, potholes of irony ahead." And you know what they say about warnings, right? Always read the fine print. It's like the guy who said, I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down. Now that's a book I'd love to get my hands on. Or should I say, keep my hands off. But let's not forget about the ultimate truth of life. They say, time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. And if that doesn't make your head spin, I don't know what will. Remember folks, laughter is the best medicine. Unless you're laughing for no reason, then you might need some medicine. And speaking of medicine, isn't it strange that doctors call what they do practice? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? But let's not get too philosophical here. After all, I told my friend that philosophy is a walk on the slippery rocks of logic. And he said, yeah, and the fall is a sudden plunge into reality. Well, that's all the time we have for witticisms and one-liners today. Remember, I used to be indecisive, but now I'm not quite sure. Why don't seagulls fly over the bay? Because then they'd be bagels. Welcome to the land of the absurd, where logic takes a backseat and humor is the driver. Now don't expect things to make sense here, because where's the fun in that? Instead, let's dive into the ocean of outlandish, where the punchlines are as surprising as they are hilarious. Let's start with this gem. Why don't we ever see elephants hiding in trees? Well, because they're really, really good at it. You see, absurdity is all about bending reality until it snaps back like a rubber band, hitting you right in the funny bone. Consider this. If a parsley farmer is sued, can they garnish his wages? It's a question that challenges your expectations. And that's where the humor lies. In the unexpected, the unpredictable, the downright ludicrous. Here's another one. Why don't some fish play piano? Because you can't tune a fish. Now I know what you're thinking. That's just plain silly. And you're right, but that's the beauty of absurd humor. It doesn't need to make sense. It just needs to make you laugh. Moving right along. What do you call a snowman with a six-pack? An abdominal snowman? Yes, even our frosty friend isn't safe from the absurdity. There's no rhyme or reason here, just the joy of the unexpected. And finally, let's end this roller coaster of ridiculousness with a classic. Why don't scientists trust atoms? They're a tricky bunch because they make up everything. Absurd humor is like a magic trick, pulling laughter out of thin air. It's the unexpected twist, the punchline you didn't see coming. So next time you're in need of a laugh, remember the seagulls, the elephants, and the untrustworthy atoms. Because in the world of absurd humor, anything can be funny, as long as it's absurd enough. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Well, folks, we've laughed, we've groaned, and we've questioned our sense of humor. We've just navigated the treacherous waters of puns galore, where wordplay was the order of the day. Those puns had us splitting our sides, didn't they? With punchlines that were wordy, nerdy, and oh so punny, we learned that a good pun is its own reword. Then we sailed into the realm of dad jokes, those groan-inducing gems that make you roll your eyes and chuckle despite yourself. From the classic, why don't scientists trust atoms, to the answer, because they make up everything, we've seen that dad jokes are the DNA of humor. They're in our genes, after all. We then ventured into the land of witticisms and one-liners, where brevity is the soul of wit. We were reminded that sometimes less is more, and a well-placed quip can pack more punch than a lengthy gag. From sharp retorts to clever observations, we've seen that the world is indeed a stage and every line counts. And who could forget our foray into the world of absurd humor? That place where logic takes a backseat and silliness reigns supreme. From nonsensical scenarios to bizarre punchlines, our journey into the absurd taught us that sometimes the funniest things are the ones that make the least sense. As we wrap up this laughter-filled journey, we want to thank you for being such good sports, for embracing the laughs, the groans, and everything in between. We hope this humor-fueled ride has brightened your day, lightened your mood, and tickled your funny bone. But don't worry, this isn't the end. We'll be back with more puns, dad jokes, one-liners, and absurd humor to keep you laughing. So stay tuned. Keep those smiles wide and hearty laughs ready because the fun has only just begun. Remember, laughter is the best medicine. Unless you're laughing for no reason, then you might need some actual medicine.